I'm trying to take the text of the Book of Mormon and make a map out of it, as opposed to normally we do it the other way around. My concern and why I did all this is I like to promote the historicity of the Book of Mormon, getting away from the idea that the Book of Mormon is just a collection of nice stories, but it didn't really happen in the way that the Book of Mormon says. Of course, I believe that it did. One out of every 3 verses in the Book of Mormon has some reference to geography in it, which is amazing and remarkable. We have so much given to us that when we read the Book of Mormon, we don't understand. We just glaze over it. But the Royal Spellman version, the answer is yes. So it was totally consistent.
So for Joseph Smith to have done that, he would have had to have been an absolute genius to keep track of all of that and not contradict himself. Welcome in here on Zion Media to another episode. And it's not really a Key of David podcast. I don't know what to call this because I don't have the key and I don't have the David. But what I do have is I've got Drea, who is the bomb. The bomb stands for our business operations manager. We wanted her to be on here because David couldn't make it and Trevor couldn't make it. And I'm also joined by the real MacGyver. You've seen him on and off here. He's like our Swiss Army knife. He does a ton of stuff for not just Zion Media, but everything as it relates to what Trevor and I got going on. So excited to have you two on with us. And we are joined by Jay Mackley, and we've got somebody else that's going to be presenting on Book of Mormon geography, which he refers to as the Zarahemla Model. And I believe, Jay, we met you at Rod Meldrum's conference, the Firm Foundation.
That's right.
Did you present there as well?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to essentially be going through what he presented there at that conference and his model. And I want to jump right into it. Jay, tell us a little bit about who you are and what got you started on Book of Mormon geography, and then we'll jump into the presentation.
Okay. Well, my background is in software engineering and data analysis. I'm retired now, so I can work on this stuff more. But I began as Zarahemla Model back in 2015. And I've been working on it, 10 to 20 hours a week, more like 20 since then. Except I completed the project past year. I make just minor adjustments at this point. If you can see on this main screen here, there's a word cloud, and it says things like data integrity and GPS and hermeneutics and completeness and algorithms. My approach to the Zarahemla geography is one of I'm trying to make it a very scientific approach, and there's a lot of technical aspects that go into it, including a database and computer algorithms. So I try to get away from guessing, and that's what makes this Zarahemla model unique. Yeah.
Awesome.
So everything in the word cloud is on the left, and that's what composes the model actually in physical reality. On the right is an icon for Zarahemla Quest, which is a Book of Mormon did with me involved with in creating, but that's another story.
Okay, well, let's jump into your presentation. Let's jump into the Zarahemla model that you got, and let's see how it jives with all these other people that we've had on that are talking about Book of Mormon geography. So jump right into it. Your presentation is up.
Okay, all right. Well, my concern and why I did all this is I like to promote the historicity of the Book of Mormon, getting away from the idea that the Book of Mormon is just a collection of nice stories, but it didn't really happen in the way that the Book of Mormon says. Of course, I believe that it did, and I think the geography model, a good geography model, will help establish that, which is one of my prime motivations for doing this. Plus, it's just fun. Um, so this here shows some interesting statistics about the Book of Mormon. When you get into the New World, 1 out of every 3 verses in the Book of Mormon has a reference to geography. And so the model is based on strictly on the text of the Book of Mormon. There's other interesting things like the archaeology and whatever, but that's not a part of the model. The model is based on the text. And 1 out of every 3 verses in the Book of Mormon has some reference to geography in it, which is amazing and remarkable. We have so much given to us that when we read the Book of Mormon, we don't understand. We just glaze over it, our eyes glaze over. But there's a lot of geography there, a lot to work with. So a unique aspect of the Zarahemla model is that it's what I call complete. If you look at the little circle numbers on the bottom left here, lands named 46, cities named 54, etc. It's complete. Everything's complete in the model. There's nothing left out. So that is, I think, a indication that the Zarahemla model is on the right track. But it's also useful. I mean, why look at a model that only has 10% of the locations identified? It's not favored this way. So, any questions at this point?
Nope.
Just
Well,
waiting for you to show us the details.
okay. Here's just a quick comparison to other Heartland models. The Zarahemla model is a Heartland model. It's not a Mesoamerican model. In column 1, we have all the things that I'm trying to identify with the model, including Jaredite locations. Without being specific, I don't want to criticize other models. Every model that I've seen and studied has contributed towards my understanding. But most of the Heartland models, as identified in columns 2 through 4, are way too big, and they don't contain very many lands or cities within that, 10 to 30% most. They don't include journeys, battles, Jaredites, topography, relationship tracking. They just don't have it. So, but on the far right is what the Zarahemla model claims to have, which is 100% of all these aspects of what a model should have.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the methodology I use. I mentioned earlier I would try to do it scientifically, but it's a unique problem. It's a reverse engineering problem. I'm trying to take the text of the Book of Mormon and make a map out of it, as opposed to normally we do it the other way around. But in a reverse engineering approach, which is common in computer science, you need to have certain steps. So in this screen, you can see at the top left-hand corner, there's the Book of Mormon, the earliest text. That's the text that I'm using, the Royal Skeleton text, which is as close as we can get to the way the Book of Mormon fell from the lips of Joseph Smith. It is based on the original manuscripts. So I examine that text, manual textual examination, and I change it into a standardized nomenclature, meaning I take the relationship information that I find, the constraints that I find in the text of the Book of Mormon, and I put them into a kind of formula, and I'll show that to you in a minute. Those formulas or constraints are also put into an entity relationship table, which is both something that can be viewed online, and it's a database, represented in a database as well. Then there are rules of interpretation. That's part of the hermeneutics. And I use the Oxford English Dictionary because Royal Skeleton pretty much proved that the Book of Mormon is based on Old English, early modern English. And so I use, in my interpretation, in my analysis, I use English word definitions that go back to the 1600s. So at the end of all this, I get a logical Mormon database, and I run it through validation algorithms that I wrote, computer programs. I manually apply rules of application because the internet is a source of information as I work through the analysis. It's also the topography, so zero maps is very important for me. I run through the algorithms and I give it a test. and then I come up with results. So this is the basic methodology that I use.
Okay.
Entity relationships. That's very important. It's the key to the whole model in the database itself, are those relationships. The Book of Mormon doesn't really tell us, where Manti is or where Zarahemla is. It doesn't say, look for this or that. But it does have those constraints. We know that A is north of B, and therefore A can't be south of B or east. And so those constraints are in the Book of Mormon, and those are the key building blocks that I use as I approach the reverse engineering process. These are some of the components of the database. We have entity types, which are cities, lands, hills, wilderness, etc. We have entity names, which are the places in the Book of Mormon that have actual names. We have entity types, cities and lands, for example, and relationship keywords, which are near, border, south of. And so those can be combined to partial entity relationships and full entity relationships. A full whatever relationship is like in city of Newark. We know it's a place, and we know it's a city. And so the total number is 782. And these are what these relationships are tracked in the database. And it's what makes analyzing the book Long for Geography beyond the capability of doing manually on the back of a napkin. It has to be done scientifically and programmatically and with a database, which is too much.
Does anybody plug this data into AI to see what AI produces? Given that we have technology now?
Yeah, I don't know anybody who's even gathered this information except for me, and I haven't done it.
Okay.
I don't quite know how yet. We'll have to see this in the future. That'd be a good thing to.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what AI has to say, because AI can just take all this data, all this information, and compile it and say, this is what AI thinks. That would be an interesting thing to do. And we have some people on our team that are very AI expert. So it would be a fun thing to do. But anyways, keep going.
Well, I would love to have somebody do that. Here is the formulas I was talking about. For example, this is the entity relationships for Manti. In the green, we have the entity name itself. In the blue, we have the entity type. And in the orange, we have basically keyword operators. And then at the end, after the plus sign, we have different rules, interpretation rules, and application rules that are used in making the determination for that particular constraint. So when I say relationships, what I mean is constraints, basically. And Manti has 20 of them. Manti also has identified in the physical model a GPS coordinate for the city and two GPS coordinates that identify the land. And that's at the bottom. The very bottom, you'll see a little error message that says 0 errors, and 6 cardinal direction validations for Manti. So I put this information through validation algorithms to make sure that there's an internal self-referential integrity for all these relationships, and to help me when I use this information and I'm looking at maps. I know that this information is correct and is consistent with itself.
Right.
Thank you for watching this episode on Zion Media. And I'm actually here to let you know that we have a sponsor. It's Oraqel Code. Now, you've heard us talking about Oraqel Code a couple times. It's an algorithm and application that we're actually designing. And it actually tells you not only a little bit about yourself, but we've been able to adjust this algorithm, or this app, in a way that allows us to make a song for people. And some of the responses that we're getting is that this song is almost like a patriarchal song, because when people see what their Oracle code says about them, they say it's like, whoa, that's like my patriarchal blessing, or like a special message just for me. And then when we make a song out of it, it makes it even more unique and more attuned to who you are and your purpose here on life. And so, really excited about that. The way you get access to your Oracle code and song is by go ahead and using the QR code that's on screen or going in the link in the description and filling out the form so that way you can be able to get your own Oracle code. I'm really excited to be able to be a part of this transformation and this blessing in people's lives. And I look forward to hearing what your Oracle code says about you today.
Questions? I'm doing all the talking.
No,
but I'm
no,
not hearing too many questions.
we're just kind of getting the information from you. So you just keep going.
Okay, great. Here's the entity relationships for Aaron. It just happens to be the first one on the list because it's alphabetical. Here's what I talked about, the hermeneutics. That's composed of two elements, rules of interpretation and rules of application. When someone reads the Book of Mormon for any purpose, there's certain assumptions made on the words that you come across. What does this mean? What does it mean when you say wilderness? What does it mean when you say, well, there's a lot of possibilities. What does it mean when you say it's 3 days travel? So the rules are split into two categories: interpretation of rules, how it is interpreted, and then rule of application, meaning how are the constraints of the database applied through the topography. And I could just make those assumptions and keep them in my head, but I'm trying to be scientific. They won't respond. I want somebody to be able to look at the model and say, I can figure out by the information he's giving me how he came to that conclusion. It may be right or wrong, but at least I understand how he got there.
Gotcha.
And so that's what the rules do. It keeps me honest and consistent, and it provides a guide for others who are looking at the model.
That makes sense.
So here's the logic methodology. On the left here, I have the abbreviated rules of interpretation. On the website, it has a full paragraph, but I just kind of summarize it here on the left. I won't go through all that. But on the right, there's a logic methodology, which is basically a flow chart that I use as I make decisions. So I start out by selecting a Book of Mormon location. I go through the flow chart, and I end up saying, is it a good result? Yes or no? If it is, based on everything I've gone through in the flow chart, then I go back and do another one. And if it's no, I try again. I had to do this 142 times because there are 142 entities, geographical entities in the Book of Mormon.
Have you found any contradiction in anything? Is it just describing geography that you're like, well, that contradicts what it says over here with what it's saying right here?
That's a beautiful question, because that's one thing I wanted to see as I went through the process was the Book of Mormon consistent with itself? And when it comes to the text that we use in our standard Book of Mormon official canon, the answer is no. There's two entities that do not make sense. But if you look back to the Royal Skeleton version and the changes that he made, he fixed those essentially with copy errors. And so with the Royal Skeleton version, the answer is yes. It is totally consistent.
Okay. So for Joseph Smith to have done that, he would have had to have been an absolute genius to keep track of all of that, and not contradict himself.
Oh, that's absolutely true. Especially if he's not looking at a map as he says he writes all this down. How could he keep track of it? He couldn't. Wouldn't be possible. In fact, that's the major barrier to getting Book of Mormon geography today is people, don't use the scientific method or detailed procedures to come to the conclusion. So we're just guessing, and it comes out sometimes right, sometimes wrong.
Right. Gotcha.
Jay, I've got a question, Jay. I know when developing a theory or coming up with a model, there are certain assumptions that need to be made. There's a foundation to operate off of. Do you have any kind of assumptions that are listed anywhere?
Well, that's what the abbreviated rules of interpretation and its application are doing. Those are the assumptions that I make as I go through the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep rolling.
Let's see what we got. Oh, okay. So here we have I actually have two websites. I have a website that has all the information and all the maps. And then I also have another website that shows the technical detail aspect of the database. So that's what we're looking at here. So we're looking at a Blom, which is a Jaredite location. And you can see here above the box, there's 5 buttons. So when you click one of the buttons, it runs a validation algorithm against the database for a Blom. And if there's something wrong, something is not consistent, or contradictory, little error messages show up. When I first did this, I had like pages of errors. I thought I was really careful, I did everything right, but then I started putting it through validation algorithms and I realized that, oops, I got a lot of mistakes here. And so most of them are minor mistakes, but I had to change it to make it give it that self-referential integrity.
Gotcha.
And so when I click the buttons, different algorithms are run. I won't go through all the algorithms that they're there. I guess that's the best one.
Gotcha. Okay.
Here's an example. Let's see. We have a Blom. It's east of where the Nephites were destroyed. But I could actually go into this website and change east to west and click the directions button. And it says, whoops. It said you have an error. GPS says it should be east bearing 80.962. And I say west. And so that's my mistake. So I had to go and change it again.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
I just show that as an example of how the validation algorithm can catch things that are inconsistent.
Okay.
This is a map. As I mentioned, it's a complete model that contains all the locations, geographical locations, but it also contains journeys and battles and other things, because if it's in the right location, the description of the battles will match the topography. And so this is a map that shows an example of that. On my website, I have all 140 locations, or 142 locations identified as far as things that happened in the history of the Book of Mormon. In this case, we have the Amlicites battling the Nephites. I call it Amlicite battling. So H, B, M, S, G, and all these letters are in parentheses in the actual text of the Book of Mormon on my website that I have next to this graphic. So you can read it and say, oh, man, that's SM. Oh, this is G. Okay. Oh, this is H. So you can relate the text to the map. And so that's part of what I try to do.
Now, you mentioned you have 2 websites.
I actually have 3 websites. There's ZCHN at theholyscripture.info. That's the main website that has all the information.
Okay.
But there's a 3D map website too. It can be accessed separately or through a link on the main website.
Okay.
And that one takes you to a Google Maps presentation where you can zoom in and out.
Oh, okay.
But there's icons for all the locations, and all the information is basically transferred
Where
to a Google Map presentation.
are the links for the other websites on your main website?
If you go to the introduction section at the beginning and look towards the bottom, there'll be a link to it.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So there's the main website. There's a Google Maps website that has all the information in it. It's very extensive. And finally, there's the database website where the algorithms are run. The validation algorithms can be run and viewed. So that's the one I showed you with the black screen with the MD relationships, just that are done. So there's basically 3 websites. But there's links to it whenever you're on the main website and you need to see something that's on the other, there's a link to it. So it's not too hard to call them, hopefully. So this is another map that's on the website. This is actually key because the whole key to the Book of Mormon geography, well, I would say there's two keys. One is Zarahemla itself, which is extremely important. There's like 82 clues, geographical clues for Zarahemla, so that's a lot. But the other one is this boundary between Desolation and Bountiful, where it's located and how it's traversed, and how it's so important in Book of Mormon history. They're always talking about how that's the last thing they'll give out in the Book of Mormon. It's this location between Lake Superior and Lake Huron, because it's the key to navigating and controlling the whole Great Lakes region. And that's, of course, critical for trade and military reasons. But all the presentation and information about that and why it's so important is on the main website. I couldn't possibly get into all of it right here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Here's an example of, most people assume that there isn't much can be done with Zarahemla, Jaredite geography, because there's just not as much information on the Book of Ether as there is in the rest of the Book of Mormon for the Nephites. But that's actually not true, because even though most of the Book of Ether covers basically the reign of the kings and the genealogy, toward the end, there's a lot of information about the battles that took place, and that those battles had topography. And there are also overlaps between the Nephite locations and Jaredite locations. So once you find that overlap and identify a location that's both Jaredite and Nephite, like the land of Bountiful and the land of Desolation, then you can start lining things up with the topography to the battles that took place at the end of the Book of Ether. So there's 15 battles on this map. I think there's 29 total. There's some more on another. But if you recall, the Book of Ether has a lot of information about the battles. The battle period and what order it happened, and they fled down to the seashore, and they went into the wilderness, and all kinds of stuff. So it's part of the completeness is that I'm able to include the Jaredite information as well, which I'm very pleased about, actually. Well, we talked about this already. As I mentioned, I try to apply a scientific method. So I show that on the left here. I define it as these 5 steps. So I formulate a hypothesis. I conduct experiments to test, and that's over on the right, how I do that. I observe the test results. If it's a positive test, I draw conclusions. If it's negative, I try over again. My testing is actually to read directly in context the text of the Book of Mormon, which is the last step. Let's see in the flow chart. Not the last step, but the second to last step. So here's what I mean by scientific method. There's 3 aspects of it, my approach. One is to be scientific, the other is to be complete, another is to be consistent, and another is to be transparent. These are my 4 goals of the presentation. The scientific method, interestingly, is in the Book of Alma 32. In fact, the whole chapter it's about that. Verse 32 or 33 kind of sum it up, though. You count the seed, you try the experiment, you look at the results, and that's basically what I'm doing. It's very scriptural.
Gotcha.
We've seen this, but this is an example of completeness, which is what I'm striving to do, is to be complete, not to leave out anything by saying, I don't know. Some things are more sure than others, like Zarahemla, like I said, has 82 clues. So I'm pretty positive about Zarahemla, but other places may have far less. And so But any conclusion follows the rules of application and rules of interpretation. So there's a logic path could be followed for each one of them. Consistency is what this is represented. Let's go back to this other screen here. So we talked about the scientific method. We talked about completeness quite a bit. Consistency, it comes back to the computer algorithms and validating the database for correction integrity. That's consistency. Transparency is also a goal of mine. One of my frustrations in looking at other models, and I've looked at 9 meso models and 5 different heartland models. It's very frustrating to me when I can't follow how they came to the conclusions, And so that's why everything that I have is in one place, and it's complete. So the website has everything that I know is there.
And if somebody wants to go to the website, what is that website? What's the domain name?
ZCHM, like Zarahemla Central.
ZCHM.
Zarahemla Sacred Heartland Model is what that stands for.
Okay.
Dot,
What is the site?
.theholyscriptures.info.
.theholyscriptures.info. Okay.
I can probably show that.
You're good. Oh, there it is. Okay. ZCHM.theholyscriptures.info is where you can find all of your research. Got it. Okay.
That's correct. So that's a quick presentation. At the Book of Mormon Evidences Conference, I also presented even examples of how I identified the Waters of Mormon. Just there's not time to show how I identified all 142 locations, but I just use that as an example. I don't know if you have time for that or not, or whether you want to ask questions.
Yeah, I'd like to just maybe ask some questions and we'll kind of wrap this up. That this is really interesting. What ultimately got you started down this path of really trying to identify Book of Mormon geography? Like what was the driving force for you that got you going on that?
Oh yeah, there's a little story there. Back when I was a freshman at BYU a long time ago, in between semesters, I had some time, but I thought I'd use to read the Book of Mormon. And of course, this is after my mission, so I'd read it before several times. And I had noticed that there was a lot of geography information that I didn't understand. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to read it and focus on the geography of this reading, take some notes. So I did that. I took some notes. Notes are basically useless. They were sorry, I guess. And but I realized quickly that I had a real sense, just a gut feel that with the right type of maps and the right kind of information, that this could be worked out, from a technical perspective, that there was enough information to figure it out. However, at that time, that was a long time ago, we didn't have Google. We didn't have Google Maps. We didn't have a lot of, I didn't have the knowledge and the technical knowledge that I used for databases and stuff. I was still learning that stuff in college. So when I actually started it in 2015, the model, by then I had the skill sets that I could do this. So anyway, back in 2015, I decided it's time to take this off the shelf because I had promised myself I would come back to it sometime later in my life if I was too busy and I didn't have all the information I needed when I first looked at it. So I took it off the shelf in 2015 and I thought, well, now with my database skills and my programming skills and all this information on the internet that I could easily access, I think I'm going to give this a shot. So I emailed Rod Meldrum and I told him what I wanted to do, and he encouraged me to do it back in 2015. So I took off and started, and that's kind of the backstory.
How does like Rod Meldrum and some of these other Heartland guys, what do they think about your model and the research you've done?
They try not to be critical. If they're kind of wedded to their own, you know. I don't think they've looked at it very hard. To them, it's just one out of many. I wish some people would look at it a lot more critically and a lot more deeply, but it's hard because not everybody's a computer scientist, and not everybody understands what I'm doing, and so I understand when people get intimidated by it. So
Gotcha. And maybe tell me a little bit about how your research has helped, I guess, further your testimony of the Book of Mormon.
well, if I had done this and found out that all of these relationships were meaningless and self-contradictory, and there's no way to get out of it, it would kind of show me that the Book of Mormon was just a made-up thing. But quite the opposite happened.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
but my testimony is not based on the geography, of course, but seeing the Book of Mormon from different angles and seeing how it's true from different angles is testimony building overall.
Do you think that we're going to see the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon in our lifetimes, or do you think it's going to continue to be hidden from us?
I think it will come forward in our lifetimes. And I think that would be the key to show whether this Zarahemla model is correct or not. I think a lot of the stuff that was left out of the 116 pages was some of the details of traveling to the New World and setting up camp in Zarahemla.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
And I think
there's a whole lot.
I think it will resolve a lot. Until then, I think, except for nerdy people who want to get into it, like me, I think it's going to be still a controversial subject. I don't expect that the world is going to adopt this model. They won't understand it. So,
I think,
Gotcha.
Jay,
Well,
that
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think, Jay, that your perspective can speak to a lot of people who, because there's so many people out there that might do the way you think, that if they just like heard everything about how you lay it out and how scientific you are, that would really be interesting to them. And I just wanted to ask you, to those that do speak your language and that understand the programming and that geek out about how detailed you can get and make sure that all these points are taken care of and all the work you put into it, what would you like to say to them and in communicating what you've put together here?
love someone with their computer skills. So look at this and validate some of the work that I've done. I'm not the best, computer programmer analyst in the world. There are people I know that are better than me, but there aren't too many people in the world who have the skill set and the interest in the Book of Mormon and the interest in the geography and the time to do all this. And so I'm kind of unique in that aspect of having all those characteristics that led me into this project in the first place. But I know there are better technical people who understand this information better than even I do. And I would love someone who had those skills to look at it and examine it. Yeah, I will.
One thing I noticed just scrolling through your website is the Google 3D map, and it's fascinating because you have all sorts of points all over all over the map, and you click on it and it gives you the detailed breakdown. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can see the paths of travel from the old world to the new world, and it's got a lot to it, so it's pretty fun to play with.
It does have a lot to it. I did that because for those who can't relate to what I'm doing with databases, everybody can relate to a map. And so at least you can see it there. And the icons do have all the detailed information. It's like up to 5 icons per location. So it's 142 locations. There's over 1,000 icons on the map. So each one of those icons is not trivial. There's a lot of information on some of them. And so you can see the information in the context of the topography, which is useful, I think.
And then what programs did you use to do some analysis and programming in the database?
Initially I used Microsoft Visual Studio, and then I moved to a program called QM Basic. but now it's been moved into JavaScript. So
Okay.
it's one advantage of doing it 3 times is each time I improved it. So
Very good.
Okay, awesome. Well, what I'd love to do eventually is get with you and get with some of our AI people and see if we can run this through AI and see what AI has to say. I think that the combination of all the research you've done with AI being able to analyze it might be very interesting. But Jay, thank you so much for coming on. You've done a ton of work, and Book of Mormon geography continues to be a topic that people are certainly interested in, and I understand why. It did what happened to Jay is the more he dove into this geography, the more it built his testimony that there is no possible way Joseph Smith could have just been making this up without having some major contradictions in just the geography alone, let alone how doctrinally rich the Book of Mormon is. So, Jay, thank you for taking the time with us today and going through your model. I invite all of you to go visit his site and dig into it. Post in the comments. I mean, we've had a lot of people on here talking about Book of Mormon geography. We've had Rod Meldrum on. We've had Lance on. We've just had a lot of other people on. Brian Nettles has been on, and we've just had lots of these conversations. So there's a lot of people that are interested, and eventually, I believe nothing shall be withheld, and we will know exactly where this thing took place. But I am convinced America is the promised land. And that plays a big role into exactly the Book of Mormon geography. And there's really two geographies, as you know. There was the Jaredites, and then there are the people of Lehi. So it's really interesting. But thank you, Jay, for coming on. Hey, if you like this, go ahead and smash that like button. And if you haven't got your Oraqel code, listen, we're going to post it in the description. Go get your Oraqel code and your song. Go order it today. I promise you it will not disappoint. So for myself, I am Shane Baldwin, for the real MacGyver and the bomb, Drea, and our guest, Jay Mackley. We'll see you guys all next time.